We scan out Swaguego. And down there way, Jojetto. O Tenonio, Hojanocto, scan out go hate, had de Wanisa gay, had de Wasunda gay. Nate way, had done down Shawanis, had de Wanisa gay. Dani Honio down on Guatni Gwent. And Dani Hoko, Dekni Wadon ta, O Tuquanonio, Posawege, Oinge. Nate Kai, wa Ongoya de Hanway Nangan, Tatinonge, Yoenza ge. Dane Wai Jojetto, Dane Wai Se Wadon ta, Nate Wai Otquanonio, Nane Indigenous Language Institute, Nate Wai, Weso Nyawe, Wadi Wais, Uiwa ge Nangan Wanisade. To Ine and all of your staff, Jerry, everybody. So I'm just going to get started here. So I acknowledged everybody that I could in the language. I acknowledged our Creator. First and foremost, as Jerry said, there's a lot more to that. That's not so much a standard thing that we do in our ceremonies, but when you're out in public like this and speaking, that's something you want to do, is acknowledge our Creator for everything He does for us. So I got my presentation here, 7 generations of responsibility, and I'll just kind of get into this here. So Zitzawa ni gyaso ne ongwe onwe ka, Damian ni gyaso ne ganyo onka. So as you can see, my name, that's a corn tassel up there. There's probably a lot of people already know what that is, but that's what my name translates into, is a corn tassel. Tonawanda, onundawaga nibogo and zudan. The nation that I come from is the Tonawanda Seneca Nation, located in Western New York. So I always have to say Western New York because as soon as I say New York, everybody thinks I'm from New York City. But there's so much more to New York State than just New York City. So we're on the west side there. So where I come from, we have a clan system. And the clan that I come from is the Turtle Clan. So I get that from my mom, who got it from her mom. We follow our mother's lines, and that's just the way it goes out there. So we have a clan system. This is my clan. Gianna Kone Wakia Yeya Son. So I have 2 daughters, Gianna and Wakia. So they're a little bigger than this now, but that's the pride and joy of my life is my daughters, and they're my driving force. Hanon Towni Hanon Deas Dahqua Dwagyot De Hawene Tonawanda. So this is the program that I manage. It's called Hanon Towni Hanon Deas Dahqua. So it relates to their making their own path. In regards to the children's program that we run. Since I began working there, we started to have an adult program, so now the adults are making their own path as well. So it's Hanon Towni, Hanon Deas Dahqua. But a lot of people can't pronounce it, so we just call it Lifeways back home, or Indian school. And last week, it was 3 years, just over 3 years that I've been working there, so I've hung in there for 3 years. So the theme of the conference right there, second language learning, the journey begins with me. I see some familiar faces from last year, so I don't want to try to rehash too much from last year. Last year was about a language journey, so I shared a lot of my travels. As Maura pointed out, I've lived in the Dakotas, I've lived in Wisconsin, went to school at Haskell in Kansas. A lot of people, as she called off the tribes, as you raise your hand, I've been lucky enough to go and do things in your community, whether it was language related, if it was indigenous farming conferences, if it was health and wellness conferences. I've had the pleasure of going to a lot of other communities and visiting and meeting a lot of people from out there. So it's good to see all of you from out your way. So as we talk about this, as Maura said, I lived in Buffalo. So I'm just going to kind of touch on that I did not grow up in my community. So when we talk about second language learning, not everybody is lucky enough to grow up around their ceremonies, around their speakers, around the people that know those things that you need to know to be able to learn everything that goes with your language. So this is the west side of Buffalo. That's where I grew up. I spent most of my formative years from first grade through 11th grade. And again, I didn't really we didn't go to the res that often. There wasn't anything in my schools that really tied to our culture or language. We didn't have socials. We didn't have singing at my school. I was one of the very few Native students in our classes. So I had everybody but Ongwe in my class. Me and my sister were always one of the very few in our schools. So the other part was there's no speakers in my family. So not my mom, not my dad, not any of my aunties or uncles, no grandmas and grandpas spoke our language. There was nobody to ask Seneca language about anything. So because of that too, nobody talked about ceremonies, nobody talked about the functions, nobody really talked about what we did. I will say my dad is a playwright and an artist. His name is Bruce King. He lives down here. My parents still live down here. They relocated in 92, which I'll get to that. One of the things they did instill was our creation story and the journey of the peacemaker. There were things in our culture that they did instill in us in English. But as far as that goes, there was no speakers in my family at all. My mom and dad used a handful of words, about eight words or expressions while I was growing up. And a couple of them were just like exclamations, like, gay, like they would say it, like that's just like, geez, what are you doing? Or, and my mom would say, adzuv, she was cold, so that's just like brr, whatever. And that was the extent. There wasn't very much that they used when it came to that. So I can't remember a time in my young life where I actually sat down with a speaker and they said, here, you got to learn from this person. So we relocated 2,000 miles away in 1992 down here to Santa Fe, New Mexico. I attended the Santa Fe Indian School just up the road there, and I graduated from there in 1993. So I do have some roots down here now, and my parents stayed. They've been here ever since 1992. So now I'm located even further away from my home community. There's little to no chance of me getting any kind of interaction as far as going to Longhouse, being around my dances, being around my ceremonies. I'm 2,000 miles away. So the good thing is being down here, I got to that was the first time I got to go to school with all natives. That was the first time I didn't have to worry about who I was and where I come from. I could be myself. So that was nice. But that was also the first time I realized that there's other languages available in Indian country. Because everybody back home always said, oh, they speak Indian. They're talking Indian. So to me, talking Indian was like this general language. Indian was the same everywhere you went. Oh, they're talking Indian. I remarked last year how when I first saw Dances with Wolves in 1992 that I thought that was our language because they were talking Indian. So, but when I got down here, I realized I wasn't Pueblo, I wasn't Apache, I wasn't Navajo. I was different, and I realized they all spoke different languages out there. It was different, but it was still a good feeling to be down here. But again, I'm far away from my community. So the other thing is my ambitions were elsewhere. Language was not on my radar at all growing up because my parents didn't make that a part of my life. And that's not to say that they didn't raise me right. They gave me a lot of really good things. It's just that language wasn't a part of that. So my ambitions were, this is the city of Lawrence, Kansas, where I went to Haskell. So for those of you, most of you probably know what Haskell is, but if you don't know, Haskell is an all-Indian university located in Lawrence, Kansas, which is smack dab in the middle of the United States. I went out there for 4 years, met a lot of really cool people, played basketball for a semester, met the mother of my children out there, and it was a good experience. The city of Lawrence is really nice. It's just a nice small town. It's got just enough places to eat, to shop. They got a really good college basketball team there. It's a really good place to live, and a lot of natives go there and they stay there. So you have a good native community as well. So why not settle down in Lawrence, Kansas, and get my nice front lawn and 2-car garage and 2-story house and just live out my life in Lawrence, Kansas. That was what I wanted to do. That was where I wanted to stay. So when we talk about things, you got to talk about what is your motivation. So in 2003, December 27th of 2003, I got all the motivation I ever needed. My first daughter was born. So Gianna Shah Ohitakawia Webster was born. She came into my life. I remember when she came out, I cried tears of joy as soon as I heard her cry because I knew she was alive. And right then and there, we didn't find out everybody wants to have these gender reveal parties, right? So we didn't do that. We said, we're going to let it be a surprise, just like that's how everybody used to have their babies. Like you found out when they got here. So we didn't find out if she was a boy or a girl. And when she came out and the doctor said, it's a girl, I immediately knew why all the fathers were protective of their daughters that I met over the years. So that's my moment. That's my first moment with her. That's when I became a father. And now I have this big responsibility in front of me to give her something. So I want to give my daughter more than I had, and not in the sense of money and material things, but I want her to have her language and her culture. And at this time, I didn't know how that was going to happen, but I knew I wanted her to have more than I had. So there's my motivation. So skip ahead. Well, let's talk about when she was born. Because a lot of the things we talked about in this presentation was, or that they were asking us, was to talk about what's some of the technology you used, what's some of the barriers to your learning, challenges, people who motivate you. So in 2003 with my daughter, the only thing I had at my disposal at the time was cassette tapes. I had some cassette tapes, and I had a tape player that sometimes it would eat my tapes and sometimes it wouldn't. So I was really scared to play my tapes. And I didn't have a book. I didn't know the writing system for Seneca. So I just had to phonetically write everything out on these charts and then use what I could with my daughter as she's little, because I understood that even though she's not going to speak it as a little baby, she's going to start processing those things in her head, and they're going to start going in there. So I used everything that I could from those tapes. But I know I wasn't pronouncing things right because I couldn't listen to it all the time. So that was at my disposal. Plus, again, living in Santa Fe, we moved to Santa Fe with her. So again, I'm still 2,000 miles away from my community. I don't have anybody to interact with or ask questions with. Those were my challenges at that time. 2009, I'm working at the Santa Fe Indian School. One of our teachers asked us to go on a cultural exchange program to Six Nations, Ontario, Canada, to take Pueblo, Apache, and Navajo students up there that speak their language and participate in their culture up to Six Nations to go see their school. So they have an immersion language school up there, and we went. And that was the first time that I really got to see, as an adult, our ceremonies, our songs, our dances. There was so much going on when we went up there. We timed it just right. There was so much going on. So now I'm finally getting to see that our people held on. And it was good because there was young people, there was teenagers doing the speeches, doing the singing. There were little kids getting up and dancing like that. That's just their life. That's their reality, is they get up and they dance and they participate and they're around it. So I see that when I'm home now. And when I saw that, number one, I was jealous that I didn't grow up that way. I was really jealous because my mom used to take us to the Longhouse once in a while. But she never took us all the time. She never told us why we were there. And as I got to be a teenager, if I wanted to opt out, I would opt out. No, I'm just going to stay home, Ma. And she would go to the res. So I was jealous that I didn't grow up like these little kids. The other part was I was jealous that my girls didn't get to grow up like this. My girls are still sitting in Santa Fe. They're not going to Longhouse. They're not listening to our songs. They don't get to hear our languages, our speeches. They don't get to see all that stuff that those little kids get to see. So this right here, this trip in 2009, that really lit a fire in me. Like, it just told me that this is where I need to get back to. I need to get back home, back to the Northeast. And as I shared last year, I didn't know how that was going to happen. There was no game plan for how I was going to get there, but that was the plan. Even if their mom, like, she had other plans to go elsewhere. Like, I didn't know how we were going to get there, because she's from Tonawanda too. But I didn't know how we were going to get there. And I didn't see it, but I knew that's where I wanted to go. And that was my drive and my motivation at that time. So in 2010, relocated to Grand Forks, North Dakota. Their mom got into law school, and as it played out, things didn't work out there for me. Me and their mom separated. So that was a really tough time in my life, really tough time. And there was so much to that, and I don't want to really belabor that point because things aren't that way now. Everything's really good now. But there was a challenge in my life, and I have to say that our language and our culture, those of you that really know your language and your culture, you know that it's medicine, right? There's things in our language and our culture that are out there to deal with the hardships in life, whether it's loss, adversity, death. There's all kinds of things in your languages that deal with those things to uplift the mind and bring us back to that good well-being again. And I definitely needed that in North Dakota because it was a really challenging time. I didn't have any family there. I didn't have any friends there. But I met a lot of people who did their ceremonies. So these are some of my friends that did a lot of ceremonies out there. And as I got to see their ceremonies, I wanted to know more about my ceremonies. So the limitations at that time, so by this time when we're talking about what's at my disposal as a Seneca language learner, now I've developed relationships with some people back home. So now I have a couple extra books. I know how to write the language now. I know how to read the language now. I have CDs that I can burn onto my computer and then put on my phone or put on my music player to listen to the language. I drive around all the time, so I'm listening to it all the time. And then my girls are getting bigger too, right? So because my girls are getting bigger, they're growing up. If I want them to learn and use more language, then I have to learn and use more language myself with them. So I really made a conscious effort to use it everywhere we went. When we went shopping, if we went for a trip, if we're at the house, if we're eating, anything I could, I would use with them. If I read them stories, anything that I could translate in that story into Seneca, I would do that for them. And one of the biggest things I got my girls to do was to call me Hotney. So Hotney is father in Seneca. I really applaud any of you who've gotten your kids to strictly just call you mom and dad in the language. That's a really big thing. I switched them over when they were 5 and 3 to start calling me Hotney. And I never gave up on that. I could have let them go between dad and Hotney. But I always reminded them, remember Hotney, you guys are calling me Hotney. So they went 50-50, 70-30, before you knew it, that's all they call me is Hotney. So now it's awkward for them to even call me dad. Like that word is like, it's just weird to them to call me dad or father, or they just call me Hotney all the time. So that's a little thing, that's just like one word you can give to your children, or 2 words, mom and dad, that they always say that when they run in the house, because they ask you all the time, right? They want to know where their shirt is, or when are you going to feed them, or all this stuff, right? They're calling your name all the time. So I got them to do that. So these guys really brought me along a lot. I saw a lot of really good things, a lot of amazing things. Going to Sundance, going to a lot of ceremonies, going to a lot of sweats. They gave me a lot. And the guy standing on the left side of me there with the white shirt, he went through a lot of the same challenges that I did. So he's, I don't want to get too much into his story, but he went through a lot, and he could always relate to me because he knew what I was going through, and I couldn't ever deny what he was telling me. He knew what I was going through. So at this point, distance is still a factor, right? I'm in North Dakota. I'm not all the way home yet. I'm far away, removed from my community. distance is still a factor. But I did what I could to keep learning and pass on to my daughters. So in 2014, I made the tough decision to move away from my daughters and relocate to Wisconsin, where my aunties and uncles live, in Oneida, Wisconsin, Jerry's home community. I went to a ceremony out there in 2014. I liked what was going on out there, and my uncle had a big enough place to give me somewhere to live, and I took it. So I went. So this is my first time living in a Haudenosaunee community, being around a longhouse community, being able to go to our ceremonies, being able to see like our songs and our dances, even if they're in Oneida, because we're part of the Iroquoian language family. So the languages are all fairly the same. There's little things here and there that are different, but for the most part, the languages are the same across the Confederacy. So what they were doing in there wasn't really too far different from the words that they use in Seneca. Even today, I was able to follow along with Jerry, he was talking about today. And then to see my friends over here from Wisconsin, like these are my close friends over here. They became a part of my family out there. So there was a lot going on. So this is a picture of the language house out there. This is where I spent my mornings, Monday through Friday. There was no program. I wasn't paid to do it. Nobody came over and said, hey, Damian, you should go to that program and check it out. I found out what they had, and then that's where I decided I was going to be every morning. So when you talk about these second language learners, and I'm probably preaching to the choir because you guys are all here for a reason. I don't think I have to convince anybody in this room really why you have to be there, but you have to have that self-motivation to do that. So Monday through Friday, that's where I was with Sally Hocht. Sally Hocht was my teacher. And he taught us a lot. He broke down a lot of the language. He humbled me in the way that I was using the language. I learned so much from him. And he must have got a lot out of it too, because when I didn't come, he would always ask, where's Damian? When's Damian coming back? Because now they finally had somebody like showing up all the time. With Gajistawan and some of the other students that were there, we had somebody else showing up now. And it was really something because I got to participate in a lot of the longhouse ceremonies, even to the point where people saw that I was actively participating. They started asking me to take charge of some things in the longhouse, which is a lot. When you're sitting there watching, it's different when they actually give you the duty and you're the one who has to pay attention to, I don't know, we have a seed ceremony out there, right? So you got to collect seeds, the men versus the women. And whoever wins in the peach stone game that we have out there, then you have to pay out everybody who won their seeds. So I did the part, I collected all the seeds, but then when they said, okay, pay everybody their winnings, I forgot who gave which seeds or what, so I just kind of had to guess who put in their seeds. It teaches you to be really mindful when you're in charge of things, rather than just watching. And so it was a really good learning experience to be there. And everything that they gave me in Oneida was able to transfer over to Seneca to advance my Seneca to another level as well. And I lucked out that there was a couple other Senecas that lived out there too. So it was really good. I can't say enough about Sally Hocht and the language house because I just visited with him last week. And he's on this trail right now. They're out in London, Ontario, for this narrative that goes on for 5 days, and they do it for 5 weeks. And there's a guy that stands up and talks for 3.5 hours every morning and tells a story about the way our people are dealing with the coming of the colonizers, I guess, and how we dealt with those changes and the things that we have to do to remain who we are. So that's going on right now, and that's where Sally Hocht is. And I'm really grateful for what went on at that language house, and that's where I decided to be. So as a second language learner, that was really crucial to my learning. And not only that, but it was a connection back to Tonawanda, because now my friends here are taking trips back to Western New York, so I can jump in with them and I can go see ceremonies back home now. So 2 years before I even got my job, in Tonawanda. I was already coming back to Tonawanda for Gaiwio, which is the thing I was talking about there, about the 5-day speaking. I went 2 years straight already home, took time off from work, didn't get paid. I wanted to be around the language, so that's where I went. I took the hit financially so I could be around something else that goes beyond dollars and cents. That's where I wanted to be. So in 2016, that's when I got my job. That's when I made my relocation to Western New York. So that was a big leap for me, because now I'm moving even further away from my children who are still in South Dakota living with their mom. I took a real leap of faith to go out there. I didn't even know if I was going to get the job out there. I passed on a job that got into an immersion class. And, you know, I had to humble myself in Wisconsin. I couldn't really land a job out there. So I ended up slinging subs at Subway. You know, I'm 40 years old making subs at fast food that I never thought I'd be working in fast food. And when I'm not working in fast food, I'm going to the language house and doing what I can there. And whenever there's ceremony, I make sure I have time off from Subway to go to ceremonies all the time. Like, that's where I wanted to go. And even though Subway wasn't my dream job, like, I did the best I could at that job. Like, I taught everybody how to wash dishes really good, and I taught everybody how to take pride in making a sandwich. And I hate when I go to Subway now and they just slap your sandwich together, and I'm just like, come on, man, make it like you're gonna eat it, you know? So I humbled myself when I went there. Like, it was really, I don't know, man, I had to take a step back. Like, man, I'm working at Subway. But the mission was still the same, right? The language was still there. That was my priority, whether I work at Subway or whether I work for a big company, like, that was what I'm gonna do. So all of a sudden I get this job offer because I'm establishing relationships back home. My teacher at the time is also my really close friend. His name is Jamie Jacobs. He's a really knowledgeable guy, and he's younger than I am. And he took on the dedication to learn the language. And he didn't grow up with it. Like, he grew up around the ceremonies. He grew up around people who could speak, but he didn't really pick up the language till later in his life. And just to see the work that he's done, all the legwork he's done to be the person that he is in our community, he's been a lot of help to me. So when we talk about, like, that's what they asked us, who is your motivator? Who is your helper? Who's the one who gets you going? Sally Hocht was one of them in Oneida, Wisconsin. Jamie Jacobs is the other one there. So I established this relationship with him, and I always tried to show him that I'm always trying to advance myself. Because I don't know how many of you language teachers out there have had people come up to you and ask you, can I get some language materials? Can I get one of those books? I want to learn the language. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to teach my kids. So you give them all the stuff, right? You give them everything you need. And then you check in on them in a few months. Hey, how's it going? How's the language learning going? I haven't had time to do it. Or, nah, you know, they're on my shelf. I'm going to get to it someday. You know, right now we're just, you know, all the excuses come, right? About why they didn't pick it up, about why you gave them everything they need to, like, get started. But it takes their own self-motivation, and you just got to have patience as people who are in it, to have patience, like, they're going to come around at some point. I didn't want to be that. So I always tried to show him that I was learning. I was trying to advance myself. I was always trying to push it and give more to my daughters. So because of that, he was able to, you know, kind of put a bug in somebody's ear back home to say, hey, you guys should give this guy a chance, because there was a directorship opening up out there. And he put a bug in their ear to say, why don't you ask this guy? He's Tonawanda. He's got a degree. He's learning the language. Maybe it'll be a good fit. So I had to do a phone interview in the parking lot of Subway, as a matter of fact. I did a phone interview in the parking lot of Subway for my job. And I didn't know if I was going to get it, but I did get the job. And I didn't have a place to stay out there yet. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a 1999 Isuzu Rodeo that was running on its last legs, and I still had to get all the way out to New York from Wisconsin. But I really feel like when you're working in the language and you're making that impact, the Creator's going to take care of you, is going to make sure everything's all right for you. You know, he sees the work that you're doing, and he's going to make that path for you. So there it was. I got the job, and I went out there, brand new. Didn't really know a lot of people. Nobody really knew me, which was kind of good, because when I started there, everybody got a clean slate with me. You know, I don't know your history. I don't know all your party days or who you beat up back 10 years ago, or, you know, how many stores you robbed or whatever. I don't know any of that, right? So it was really good to just start over with a clean, but I had a clean slate too. Like, nobody knew about me. Nobody knew what I did, or, you know, it was a good fit, and it's been a good fit since then, and it's been a really good learning experience. Because when I worked at Santa Fe Indian School, I got to work with Native kids. And that's one of the biggest things you can do, is work with our youth, to be there for them, to be a support for them. Because some of them, they don't even have moms and dads. They don't always have that support system. They don't always have that stability back at home. So if you can be that for them, because I've coached football, basketball, boys and girls, you can be that stability for them. There's nothing better than to do that for our Native youth. So the only thing that's even better than that is to do that for your own youth from your own community, to do that for them. So for me, I've always loved working with kids. I've always loved being around them. And I remember somebody saying, boy, I wish you could do that for our kids. That was before I ever got this job. And now here it was. I was coming home, and I was going to be able to work with our kids. The future of our community was going to be right there. So this is really good. So this is the kids going out tapping trees for maple. So we go out there and tap the trees when it's time in the spring. As it starts to, we get a good freeze and a thaw, and we need that. Like, that tells us when it's time to get out there and go do that. So wahta osesta is that maple syrup. We get people to come out and tap the trees, and the kids get to do that. And we have people who boil it down, and we make maple syrup out there, and we have a whole ceremony that goes around that and gives thanks for it. So that's some of the things, to see kids. We're trying to use the language with them. We're trying to teach them our cycle, our ceremonies. Now I get to have a direct impact on our future. So now when we talk about resources, now I'm not 2,000 miles away. I'm not 1,000 miles away. I'm right smack dab in my community now. I'm around the people that speak at our ceremonies now all the time. When Longhouse happens, I get to go and I get to participate. So as a matter of fact, when I moved home, like when I started learning Seneca language, my goal was to learn how to speak it better to my girls, and to be able to go into Longhouse, go sit on the sidelines, and understand everything that they're talking about. And then when it was time to get up and dance, I'll get up and dance. And if I needed to sing, then I'll sing. But that's what I wanted to do, just participate in that way. As I start going along and hanging out with this Jamie Jacobs character, he starts giving me responsibilities to do an opening, to announce dances, to do all kinds of little things. He starts giving me these little responsibilities. So he's asked other people before to do it, and some people step up and some people don't. So we only really have two main ceremony speakers back home. It's Jamie and our other teacher, Wayne. Those are the two guys that everybody goes to ask for responsibilities for ceremonies, to put things through. And we have this thing in winter. Midwinters is our big ceremony. So during midwinters, Jamie and Wayne are running crazy everybody's houses, because everybody needs ceremonies done, and it's only two guys really doing it. There's a couple other guys that step up and do it, but even then, it's just this handful of guys who do it. So I thought, what's my excuse? Why can't I help? Why shouldn't I try to contribute to help these guys out, to be a help to our community? And it'd be different if I tried to learn these speeches and these things, and if they just didn't stick in my head. If I couldn't remember those things, if I couldn't do it in a good way, then I would decline. I would say, no, you're going to have to get somebody else. But the fact of the matter is, it did. It was sticking in here, and it was sticking in here to the point that I could help. So I'm always trying to push myself to be somebody that if they need to ask me, they can, that I can step up and help. And we need more of that in our community. So Everything paid off. And this is the best job in the world. I think all of you know there's not a lot of money in language, right? You're not going to get rich in the language community. I go to things like this all the time. Out here, back home, I've gone to other language conferences. One of the biggest things is people are fighting for grants, right? You need grant money just to keep your program running. You got to reapply all the time. There's not, I keep running into people who say, why doesn't our nation fund our language program? Because when it comes election time, right, what did they say? Language and culture, that's a priority. And then when it comes to the funding, those things get cut. Even a lot of the leadership now in other communities, like your leadership sometimes doesn't even speak the language anymore now. So the language game is kind of hard, right? You're not going to make a lot of money. Everything it's always on shaky ground if you're going to have funding after 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. I'm fortunate enough that our nation fully funds, fully supports our language program. I don't ever have to look over my shoulder and wonder if we're going to get refunded. I don't ever have to look over my shoulder and wonder if we're going to get re-upped or cut. Anything we need, they give it to us. They let me bring one of my staff members down here this year with me. Every time I've wanted to come down here, whatever I needed. If I need a plane ticket, they need to take care of my room, my registration, anything we need for the kids at the school, anything we need for the adults in the class, they take care of it for us. So I'm really lucky. It's the best job in the world. And that's my job, is to create other opportunities for the people that are under me. So I create opportunities for them to learn. We go to workshops. We have classes. We do everything we can to promote our language. And that's my job. I love it. That's my job, is to create language opportunities for others. And I don't have to worry about funding. I don't have to worry about funding one bit. We're self-sufficient. We do all our own funding. We take no federal funding at all. We do everything. So I don't know too many other people that are in that same position in the nation that have that luxury, but we do. So one of the things our people are about is being thankful. That's the 90% of the stuff we do is about giving thanks. So I'm really thankful for the opportunity that I have to have the job that I do and to be able to do what I do, to provide opportunities and to promote the language and make it grow, and to keep advancing myself. Because I could just be this administrator who sits in my office and does all the reports and does all the logistics and who never goes to ceremony, who never participates in the language. I could be that guy and just collects my paycheck and go home, and I could do that. But I don't. You have to be invested. I think you have to be invested for it to really work, because if you're only halfway there, it's not really gonna fly. So the resources at my disposal now, I have a whole library of things that I have to look at. I have a whole library of recordings. We have more speakers around us now that I can go sit and talk with or listen to. I have a bunch of second language learners who are actively pursuing and advancing their language that I can practice with and speak with. And there's so much more when we talk about that. When we talk about people who drive me, those other second language learners, they drive me too. Because we're always trying to push each other. We always talk, hey, we have to use more language. We've got to use more language with each other. So we do. We try to push each other on that. So this has been a really good job. So knowledge isn't just power, right? That's what they say, knowledge is power. Knowledge isn't just power, it's responsibility. So what I mean by that is, as you start to learn more things in your language, and you know what, I know it's kind of the same in some of your other cultures, right, I know when I live down here, the Pueblos have a lot of oratory. There's a lot of oratory in your ceremonies, and it's all entirely in the language. So you either know it or you don't. When we go to Longhouse, everything is in the language. The entire ceremony is in the language. So, and nothing gets translated. Nothing gets translated at the end. If you're lucky enough to sit next to somebody who understands, they can kind of feed it in your ear what they're talking about. But otherwise, nothing gets translated. Gai Wheel that's going on right now, the 5-day ceremony, the 5 days of speaking, none of that gets translated while you're sitting there. So you have to push yourself so that when you sit there, it's not all going over your head. You're not just sitting there marveling at the beauty of how the language sounds. You actually understand what's being said, and you understand what's being told about. Even like a funeral speech. There's so much to a funeral speech to uplift our minds for the family, for the people in attendance, for the person that's going on to the next life. There's so much to that. We just had a couple get married in the Longhouse a couple months ago, and it was the most beautiful thing to see them get married in our way. And this isn't to disparage any ways that you guys get married, but it was different. It wasn't a church ceremony. It wasn't, nobody had wedding dresses on. Everybody had ribbon shirts and ribbon dresses, and they exchanged baskets the old way. And our speaker got up there and gave them their instructions as partners as he put them together. He stood them up side by side. Oh, chadat negan. He stood them, like, put them together. So there's a whole thing that went to that. We raise our leaders the old way. So where me and Leah come from, we don't have an elected council. We don't have any elections where we come from. We have chiefs and we have clan mothers. And the clan mothers put those chiefs in for life. So we don't have any kind of elective system at all. We don't really have anything to do with the federal government other than being federally recognized. So this past summer, they put leaders up. So it's different from a swearing in ceremony where they put your hand on a book or whatever that is. You know, it's different from that. It's a whole day of this old ceremony that predates contact of how we raised leaders. And it took all day. It took all day. There's so much protocol to what goes on to raising a leader, to put them up. And they're going to be in that position for life. And they're going to take on this big responsibility now to be a leader for their nation. And they're going to be a part of a council. I sat there all day and watched it. And it was amazing to see this old ceremony and to be able to follow along in my head, to know what they're talking about, to know what they're doing, to know what they're saying to that guy that they're putting up, to know that everybody's behind him. Even if you want to object, if you don't want that guy to be in there, you can't stand up and throw a fit in English. You have to get up there and talk in the language to say why you think he's not fit to be the leader for the nation. And it can't just be because you don't like him. You got to have sound reason why you're going to object to that person being put up. And you have to convince the other ones. You have to have a good reasoning. And you have to have the language. So if you don't have the language, they get put up. So it's good to see all these old things, like I said, to see a wedding our way, to see a raising of a leader our way, to come from a community where we still handle things our way. It's not perfect. We still have a lot of problems in our community, but we handle it our way. I have a tremendous pride to come from Tonawanda and for what they do there and what our Haudenosaunee Confederacy still upholds to this day, even if it gets tough. So like I said, it becomes a responsibility because now that people know that you know how to do things, they're going to come and ask you to do these things. So those things don't always come at a convenient time for you. Maybe you had a plan for the weekend with your kids. Maybe you were going to go do something tonight. Well, that all gets put on hold because there's something that popped up and they know that you can handle it. You have to put that off to the side now and you have to help somebody else. And I suppose that's no different than helping anybody anyways, but when it's in the language, like that's that responsibility you have. We only have so many guys that you can ask to do stuff in the language. So if you're one of those guys, your phone's going to be ringing a lot when people need stuff. And you have to accept that responsibility. And that just goes with the territory because we have so many, there are so few now left. So to our second language learners, I like that Ine had everybody raise their hand, the second language learners, the first language speakers. I think that's really inspiring that we have a nice mix of people. So, is kaiwiandako oiwane eswadi wadate. So what I was trying to say is that it's your responsibility. Is kaiwiandako. It's your responsibility to take that up. Oiwane is like something really important. And eswadi wadate is like something you all have to do. You have this big job that you have to do as second language learners. You have to understand, and you already do, and maybe, I don't know if that's been put to you this way or not, it kind of hit me when I came to this realization that as second language learners, it's going to fall to us. It's going to drop on our shoulders, that we're going to have to be the ones to carry the language into the future, because our first language speakers aren't going to be here forever. They're not going to be around forever. And when they're gone, and you can't go and ask them how to say things, you can't ask them, how did this used to go anymore, because they're not around and they took it with them when they left, then it's going to be up to however much you learn, and you have to carry it forward now. So all you second language learners, I really applaud you, because it's going to be up to you to carry the future of your language and your culture into the future. You have a huge job to do, and people are going to be looking to you when you're the elder. I mean, I know when I become older and grayer, I don't know if I'm going to be like our elder at home the way she is. I'm not going to know as much as she does, but I'm going to do my best to like raise the bar as much as I can so that I can be a help to young people that might come and ask me for things. And you have to put in that work, you have to put in that effort, and realize the task that's going to fall on your shoulders when the first language speakers are all gone. So it's just a big duty. To all the first language speakers, en Guanostek, we will cherish you, we will be stingy with you. So in our language, they say that nosteg is a word to be stingy. So sometimes it can be stingy, like to not share. But usually the way it's used to be stingy is like to hold it close, to really cherish it, to not let it go, like hold on to it tight because it means so much. So we want to be stingy of our first language speakers, because you guys are everything to us. You guys are everything to your community, to the future of your language. They're going to rely on you until you take that last breath and it's time for you to take your next journey. So what I ask of you as the first language speakers is to continue to help as much as you can. And I think Governor Talachi spoke to that earlier today. Don't be afraid to tell all of us young learners like about everything that goes with the language. It was really funny. We went to Tonawanda for a workshop, and there were two older Mohawk speakers, and they were talking about some pretty like raunchy stuff in the language. They weren't afraid, it wasn't too bad, but it was, it's the stuff, like we all live life, right? There's so much to life. It's not just about everything that's prim and proper and, polite. There's everything in between. There's teasing, there's joking, there's, there's all kinds of stuff, the range of the language and all the ways that you communicate that. There's things that don't make it into the dictionaries, right? They don't make it into the documents. They don't make it into the recordings all the time. You have to share that with us so that all that way that people talk about those things, that they can still keep those little things like that. Those little things that happen between men and women, between parents and kids, between kids themselves, all these little things. You have to fill in those little gaps that aren't in the language dictionaries. So don't be afraid to go down in the gutter sometimes with some of our inquisitive learners. They want to know how to say some of that stuff and carry some of those things on. We may never learn like you guys did, but we're going to do the best we can. The second language learners, we're going to try to do the best we can. We can't learn the way you did. So these first language speakers, they're the last of the generation. The way that they learned, a lot of us aren't going to learn that way. And it's kind of sad to think about it that way, but at the same time, you got to make your peace with it. That's the way it happened. That's the way it is. So now what are we going to do about it? How are we going to work through that so that we keep learning, we take that from them? So this is the big thing, is passion. It all comes down to passion for your language. So one of my teachers who's sitting here with us, she brings this passion to our workplace. She signed up for the class 2 years ago. She went through year one. She went through part of year two. We had an opening for a teaching position, and she took it. And she wasn't sure about herself. She had never taught kids before. But what she did do is she brought this passion for the language. She goes to the longhouse. She grew up with all the ceremonies. She has family that have a lot of responsibilities in our community. And she has some amazing kids too. So she noticed some of the things that were going on in our program that were kind of repetitive, that weren't really being, the kids weren't retaining some of the things. And she made some good constructive criticism at the end of one of our school years to me. So all of a sudden this opportunity comes up, and she takes it. And now she can put her money where her mouth is, and she gets to directly impact what we're doing in our class now. And she has. Because you can collect all the curriculums and all the strategies, and you can collect all the things you want, what everybody else does. If you don't have that passion, if you don't have that fire inside of you that you want it to go and you want it to be the best that it can be, it's just going to fall flat. Because we've had people do that. They come in with all their stuff, all their books, all their trainings, but they don't have that fire, so it just kind of always stays down here. And she's raised the bar for our school. She's become this employee that I never had before. And I just love having her on my staff. She was the one that I said, I got to bring her down here because she needs to meet all the people like you who are doing these things. She has her struggles in her classes. I said, you know what? You're going to meet all kinds of people who have challenges too. You're going to have people who have challenges with early childhood, who have challenges with their own personal learning. So I'm encouraging her to make the rounds. And really, I'm encouraging all of you to make the rounds, because I see some of you came with like some good sized groups. Don't stay in your groups. You're going to see them all at home when you get back anyways, right? So you don't need to hang out with them here. You traveled miles and miles to do something new. So this is one thing I did. As I was working through the separation with my kid's mom, which was really tough, what I did was I opened myself up to a lot of opportunities. I said yes to a lot of things if I thought they were good. I took chances on things. I raised my hand first, just to volunteer, just to do something new. So when I went to conferences, I made sure to interact and talk with as many people as I could, to network with people, to create connections with people at the conferences. Because I didn't want to get back home. I didn't want to go home from the conference and tell everybody that I had a nice hotel room and I watched TV in the hotel room and I just sat at the pool and hung out with all the same people that I already, like you already hang out with them. I already know what they're all about. I want to talk to you people. I want to meet you. And you guys should interact with people who live across the country who are having the same struggles that you are. Maybe something, the way that you teach or a struggle that you overcame is going to help somebody over here who's doing that. But we'll never know if you guys stay in your groups. You'll never know. So I encourage you guys to, like, this is my 3rd year coming. Every year I come in, I sit at a different table. I don't look to sit with the people I came with. I don't look to sit with the people I sat with last year. Even though I'm really glad to see them, I always try to sit with somebody new and learn something new from everybody and where they come from and what the struggles are in their community. You have to have that passion. So how many ever saw that movie, Jaime Escalante, Stand and Deliver? Did you see that? Only a few people saw that one. All right, well, he's a calculus teacher who brings these people out of these teenagers. He teaches them calculus in the inner city. Nobody thinks they can do it. There's a part in that movie where he talks about ganas. He writes it really hard on the board. He said, this is what you got to have. Ganas. Anybody know what ganas is? He said it's desire. You got to have this desire to do it. And when he said that in a movie, and now it made more sense to me, like as a language, it's like, yeah, that movie's about math. But when it comes to language, you have to have that desire, that fire to do it. And you really have to do it because you know what? You're going to be challenged along. I don't know how many of you have been challenged along the way. Lateral oppression is a real thing in our communities, right? Or they call it the crabs in the bucket, right? That's a real thing in our communities. And not everybody wants to talk about that when we come and talk about our language programs, that there's people that really like put up roadblocks for you. They make it harder than it has to be for you to do what you want to do, whether you're trying to learn or whether you're trying to teach. you're not saying it right, you're not doing it right. That's not how somebody else would say it. There's a lot to that. That's a reality in our community. So when I say you have to have that fire, you do, because you have to be able to plow through all those obstacles when it gets really hard, when all the criticism is just weighing down on you and you just want to, it's so discouraging when somebody throws in the towel because they got discouraged by their own community. It's also really encouraging when people stick with it. Even if we've had people get dismissed from our programs and they still keep learning the language. They don't need a program to learn the language. And these programs and all these apps on our phones and dictionaries, that's not going to save it. Those are only tools. If you go to a class, it's not going to magically absorb into your head just because you sat there. Like, you have to go out and use it and apply it and go beyond the curriculum and push yourself. So that's my email if anybody wants to get a hold of me. In regards to that fire, so I said, Es sajat daniad. Es sajat daniad is like you're going to be steadfast. You're going to like hold your line. You have to do that. Es sajat daniad. That's part of like not giving up. So the other part is desade haston. Desade haston is like, you can use it when you work out, but it means like you're going to exert yourself. You're going to try your hardest to do it. Desade haston. Jago is a word I like to use a lot. I even made t-shirts that have jago on them. Jago is an all-encompassing word of encouragement to do your best. Go for it. Jago can mean when you're in the middle of it and you're thinking of giving up, it means keep it up, keep going. Jago. Jago is a word that when you do a good job, somebody says, Jago, you did good. You did a really good job, Jago. So, is esanoton, do digua nioe, eswaiwais. Is esanoton, it's up to you. Do digua, however much you're going to do, it's up to you. You make that choice. So, I just want to thank you all for your time. Looking forward to visiting this afternoon. Don't be afraid to come up and, visit, talk about whatever with the language. And I'm really looking forward to Ron Korn's presentation later on today and everybody else who's going to be here. So, Daneho soyai nangan wanisade. Daneho.